Why do you keep letting other people's words live rent-free in your mind for days? Why does one criticism from a stranger undo an entire week of progress? Why does a single setback make you question everything you've built? You already know this feeling. Someone says something careless, and suddenly you're replaying it at midnight. A plan falls apart, and suddenly you feel like giving up entirely. You've told yourself 100 times that you'll stop caring so much, that you'll stop letting things get to you, and yet here you are again, exhausted by a world that never seems to slow down long enough for you to catch your breath. Here is the truth almost no one tells you. It was never really about the criticism, or the setback, or the person who hurt you. It was about how much power you unknowingly handed over to things you cannot control. Most people spend their entire lives trying to manage the outside world, hoping that if they just get the right job, the right relationship, the right amount of approval, they will finally feel calm. But peace built on circumstances is peace that can be taken from you in an instant. Over 2,000 years ago, a group of thinkers discovered something that modern psychology is only now catching up to. They were called the Stoics, and they were not cold, emotionless men detached from life. They were soldiers, statesmen, and slaves who faced exile, betrayal, and loss, and still found a way to remain steady. They discovered that strength is not the absence of hardship. Strength is what you build in the space between what happens to you and how you respond. Stay until the end of this video, because what you're about to learn is not just philosophy. It is a way of thinking that can make you almost impossible to shake, no matter what life throws at you. If these ideas help you become stronger, calmer, and wiser, take a second to like this video and subscribe. It costs nothing, but it helps this channel keep creating content that might reach someone who genuinely needs it today, someone going through exactly what you've been going through. Right now, somewhere in your life, there is a version of you that reacts to everything. A harsh comment ruins your morning. A delay ruins your afternoon. A disagreement ruins your evening. It feels like you're constantly recovering from things instead of moving forward through them. This is not a personal failure. It is simply what happens when nobody ever taught you how the mind actually works. The Stoics believed something radical for their time, and it's still radical now. They believe that almost nothing outside of you has the power to disturb your peace unless you allow it to. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor who ruled during wars, plagues, and betrayals, wrote himself private notes reminding him of this exact truth. Epictetus, who spent part of his life enslaved, taught that freedom has nothing to do with your circumstances and everything to do with your mind. Seneca, advisor to a dangerous and unpredictable emperor, wrote about facing loss and death with the same steadiness most people reserve for easy days. None of these men lived easy lives. That's exactly why their wisdom still matters. They didn't discover calm because life was kind to them. They discovered it because life was brutal, and they needed a way to survive it without breaking. So what did they actually know that we've forgotten? Let's begin with the idea that changes everything else. The first principle is the separation of what you can control from what you cannot. This sounds simple, almost too simple, but very few people actually live by it. Think about the last time you felt anxious. Chances are, you were worrying about someone else's opinion of you, an outcome you couldn't guarantee, or a mistake you already made and can't undo. None of those things are within your control. What is within your control is your effort, your attitude, your honesty, and your next decision. The moment you stop pouring energy into things you cannot change, something remarkable happens. The noise starts to quiet down. You stop rehearsing arguments you'll never have. You stop trying to control how people perceive you. You stop bracing for outcomes that haven't happened yet. Epictetus taught his students that people are not disturbed by events, but by the opinions they form about those events. The event is neutral. Your interpretation is where the suffering begins. Picture someone who receives harsh feedback at work. One person spirals, replaying the words for days, convinced they are failing at everything. Another person, using the same Stoic lens, pauses and asks a simple question: is there something useful here I can act on? If yes, they adjust. If no, they release it. Same event, two completely different emotional outcomes. The difference wasn't the criticism. It was the mind receiving it. If you ignore this principle, you will spend your life exhausted by things that were never yours to carry. But once you apply it, you free up an enormous amount of emotional energy you can finally redirect toward your actual goals, your actual relationships, your actual growth. This leads directly into the second lesson, one that might be the most liberating idea in this entire video. Setbacks are not the enemy of your growth. They are the material of it. Modern culture teaches us to avoid failure at all costs, to see rejection as proof of unworthiness, to treat pain as something that only happens to people who did something wrong. The Stoics saw it completely differently. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the obstacle in the path becomes the path. Whatever stands in your way can be transformed into fuel, if you choose to see it that way. Think about heartbreak. It feels, in the moment, like the end of something essential. But look closely at anyone who has truly grown from heartbreak, and you'll notice they didn't grow despite the pain. They grew because of how they chose to respond to it. They learned what they actually needed in connection. They learned their own worth wasn't dependent on someone else's choice to stay. The pain became the teacher, not the punishment. The same is true for rejection, failure, betrayal, and loneliness. These experiences feel like they are breaking you, but in reality, they are revealing you. They show you what you're made of, what you still need to work on, and what you're capable of surviving. If you spend your life avoiding every hardship, you will also avoid every version of yourself that only hardship can build. Which of these Stoic lessons has challenged you the most so far? Have you ever had a moment where changing your response to something completely changed how it affected you? Share your experience in the comments. You might be surprised how many people reading are going through the exact same thing, and how much it helps just to know you're not alone in it. Now let's talk about something that quietly controls more of your life than you probably realize: the need for external validation. So many people move through their days performing for an audience that isn't even paying attention. You dress a certain way hoping to be noticed. You accomplish things hoping to be praised. You stay silent about your true opinions hoping to avoid judgment. Slowly, without noticing, you become a person shaped entirely by outside approval instead of inner values. The Stoics warned about this constantly. Seneca wrote that we suffer more in imagination than in reality, and much of that imagined suffering comes from worrying about what others think. Here's the uncomfortable truth: most people are far too consumed with their own lives to spend as much time thinking about you as you fear they do. The disapproval you're terrified of is often something only you are actually paying attention to. When you build your identity around validation, your peace becomes fragile. It rises and falls with every compliment and every criticism. But when you root yourself in your own values, in what you know to be true and important, external opinions lose their grip on you. You can be disagreed with and remain steady. You can be misunderstood and remain calm. This is not arrogance. It is freedom. This brings us to emotional discipline, the practice of responding instead of reacting. Reaction is instant, unfiltered, driven by whatever emotion is loudest in the moment. Response is intentional. It considers consequences. It aligns with who you actually want to be, not just how you feel in a single charged second. Marcus Aurelius used to remind himself each morning that he would encounter difficult people that day, people who were ungrateful, arrogant, or dishonest. Instead of being caught off guard, he prepared his mind in advance so their behavior wouldn't hijack his peace. This is a practice you can use today. Before a difficult conversation, before a stressful meeting, before checking messages that might upset you, pause and remind yourself that your peace does not have to depend on what happens next. Every time you choose response over reaction, you strengthen a mental muscle. Every time you let a reaction control you, that muscle weakens. Over time, this single habit becomes the difference between a person who is easily shaken and a person who feels almost unshakable. The final piece of this puzzle is consistency. None of these principles work as a single decision made once and forgotten. They work as a daily practice, small moments repeated until they become identity. The Stoics kept journals, not to record their day, but to examine their thoughts, their reactions, and their growth. Each night, they asked themselves what they did well, where they fell short, and what they could improve. This is not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming aware. Awareness is where change begins. The person who reflects honestly, even briefly, even imperfectly, moves further in a month than the person who never pauses to look inward at all. You didn't come this far by accident. Something in you knew there had to be a better way to move through life than constantly being knocked down by things outside your control. Remember the exhaustion we talked about at the beginning, the feeling of being undone by a careless comment or a single setback. That exhaustion isn't a life sentence. It was simply a sign that your mind needed new tools, and now you have them. You now know that peace doesn't come from controlling the world, but from mastering your response to it. You know that setbacks aren't proof you're failing, they're proof you're growing. You know that the opinions of others only hold power over you if you hand it to them. And you know that discipline, practiced daily, quietly turns into strength that no single bad day can undo. This is what it means to become unshakable. Not a life without pain, but a mind that no longer breaks under it. Marcus Aurelius faced an empire in crisis and still found stillness. Epictetus faced captivity and still found freedom. Seneca faced political danger and still found wisdom. If they could build unshakable minds in circumstances far harder than most of what you and I face today, so can you. Start small. Choose one moment today where you would normally react, and instead, respond. That single choice is the beginning of everything the Stoics taught. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If this video gave you even one moment of clarity or strength, please consider subscribing if you haven't already, and give it a like so more people struggling with the same things can find it. If you know someone who needs to hear this today, someone going through a hard season, send this their way. It might be exactly what they need. Keep watching, keep growing, and remember, the calm you're searching for was never outside of you. It was something you were always capable of building. One thought, one response, one day at a time.